Hello and welcome back to the Pick Swap podcast. I'm James Moraine. I'm here with Sean Bernard as usual, and we're also joined today by a good friend of the pod, and we love saying that, Scotty Drowned, co-founder of DSI Media. Scotty, thank you for stopping in, brother. It's always awesome to have you around.
Yeah, 100%. Anytime you guys ask, I'm going to hop on with you. Just know that you guys are awesome over here at the Pick Swap Pod. And, if anybody out there that isn't subscribed, make sure you subscribe to this pod. They got a lot of content coming out, and I do appreciate it, guys. I appreciate you guys letting me come on.
Yeah, man, absolutely. We appreciate you coming on and joining us. So send it over to Sean here. Sean, how you doing, man?
Yeah, 5-game win streak. Joel Embiid sipping Shirley Temple's post-game. I guess life is pretty good right now, so can't complain.
I need a Shirley Temple, man. I need one right now. It's been a long week for me. But the Sixers, man, they're actually winning games, and winning games they should win. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves. These have been a weak stretch of games, but they are winning them, which is, the biggest thing. They're W's in the column. Embiid has scored 30 in his last 5, and I believe in 7 of his last 8 games, he's scored over 30 points, which, we're starting to get numb to the greatness with him. But it's very, it's necessary to kind of wake ourselves back up because he's been incredible. So let's go back to last night's game and just kind of let's skim over what happened. So, Scotty, did you have any big takeaways from the game last night?
My biggest takeaways. I'm going to look at, one, I think Harris had a pretty good game. I'll point to Tobias. Yeah. He's looking a little bit more decisive, still, making quicker decisions. He pulled a couple more threes than what he usually does, which is always nice. You have to wonder if it's the matchup with, Mo Bamba, a guy that probably shouldn't be able to keep up with him, right? Yeah. But, still the layup thing, I do want to, he's got to work on that finishing, man. And I know that's, something that's talked about, widespread. But still just a few missed layups in there mixed in. But overall, a solid game. He got busy on the defensive end a little bit as well with 2 blocks and 2 steals. So that was nice to see. And then, Seth, we could talk about Embiid. I know we're going to do a whole segment on him, so I will talk about him. But Seth, once again, he kind of just – it goes unnoticed sometimes what he's doing. All of a sudden he comes out of the game with 20 points and 12 assists last night. You know what I mean? It was a very just efficient game. He was doing everything that he's supposed to on the offensive end. And I think he's just a much better playmaker. And I know we keep refreshing that, but he's just a much better playmaker than what I imagined when he was coming in. And then obviously the Twin Towers thing, which I think we'll get into there, but Drummond and Embiid at the same time. I want to ask you guys a question though, about what Doc Rivers said after the game. Do you think Embiid really asked for that?
It seems like it.
Yeah, he seemed thrilled about it post game too. So
I don't
know. I'm starting to buy in, and I guess I'll dive into it a little bit now. I think I am buying back into a little bit of a bully ball aspect. And I mean, when we think about obviously we're all scarred from the Al Horford experiment and how poorly that went. But when you think back to it, the spacing issues that arose from that was way more harmful to Ben Simmons than it was to Joel Embiid. And getting back to it, the biggest obviously rebounding has been a major issue with this team throughout the whole year. Throwing those two in together stopped that last night and really did kind of change the momentum of the game by just putting a more physical force. In the stretch that they were, the Sixers out rebounded the Magic 5-2 in the 3.5 minutes that they were in, and they were +5 in that time. Obviously, way too small of a sample size to come to any conclusions on. But one of the things that also appeals to me is we've seen so much lack of athleticism on this roster, just about every game. Adding some length kind of accounts for that and making up for that. And also having Drummond being able to be an anchor allows so much more freedom for Joel. We're asking Joel to be the motor on offense and the anchor on defense on an every game basis. Even if there's just possessions that he can kind of take off where Drummond's kind of the brute force kind of protecting the rim, that's huge for saving his legs and throughout the game and everything. So I'm not buying in that this is a long-term solution or that elevates the Sixers to a major extent, but I do think it's something that they should keep in mind in the future.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that you just kind of have for a game like that. And Sean and I talked before you got on, Scotty, the Magic are a really bad team, right? But they give a unique look with Mo Bamba and Wendell Carter as their starters. Well, you said Mo Bamba's outmatched on the defensive end trying to guard Tobias as a perimeter player. And same thing, vice versa. There was many possessions where Orlando was just too big getting offensive rebounds. So luckily, they're just not good enough to capitalize on those second chances. because there was a couple times last night where I was like, wow, they got 2 or 3 chances on that possession and they just missed a handful of threes. But I don't think it's something they're going to rely very heavily on, but it was definitely fun. And it was really, when you look back, it was the turning point of the game. It seemed like where it was kind of back and forth. It was a weird game. Like it was 8-0 run to a 10-4 run to a 16-9 run. Like there's a lot of just like almost 10-point runs, 10-point swings. And then you put those two guys in and the Sixers maintained the lead while it became small at times. It seemed like that's where they really turned the point and kind of took control of the game. So I don't know. I liked that we saw, honestly, I think the biggest thing is we saw Doc Rivers make an adjustment on the fly, which that was where for me was like, oh, he's seeing something's going wrong. He's making a decision, and maybe it took Embiid to push him there, but he did make that decision. So I liked it, to be honest.
Yeah. I thought, everything you guys said there, I think was perfect. It's nothing to overreact about. I'm sorry about my dog there. Mailman's probably down there. But it's nothing to overreact with. It's not something you want to see every game, but I do think in particular matchups, like you mentioned, where it's just kind of awkward like that. Even, against the Memphis Grizzlies, we saw that as well with Jaren Jackson kind of overmatching Tobias Harris in that sense. And obviously Embiid was out of that game, but that's another team that maybe you try that against. Or maybe the Bucks, whenever they have Giannis and another big man in there, that maybe that's something you try against if you want to try Joel Embiid guarding him. Obviously we're talking, down the line, but it's not something you want to do game to game. And honestly, it was also a good game by Drummond where we didn't see him try to do too much either. So I think that was another thing that kind of fed into that. He was very efficient in what he was doing.
Yeah, and the stat line for Drummond, 18 minutes, 12 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, and a block. Like, you can't ask for much more from him in that regard. Like, he was great. And there was, the one play he had an and one off the dribble that it's like, what is going on right now? Like, definitely a terrific Andre Drummond game. So I don't know if we're going to get necessarily that effort on a nightly basis. But to shout out Drummond, he's been terrific since he's come back from COVID. It definitely looks like he's got some fresher legs again and looks recovered. And he's been, exactly what they're looking for in the backup center position. I had a game. I was watching the Lakers game the other night, watching Dwight Howard again, and it's just I don't know why I miss him, because I don't he's not a successful basketball player for a contending team. I just don't think he can compete on that level. Yeah. But there is a charm that he has. But regardless, Andre Drummond, I do think is that the Dwight Howard without the fluff, which is cool to see. And if he cuts out a little bit of the passing, I'll like it a little more. But you can't argue with what he's doing.
That was the funny part about the post game with Doc, was how he mentioned a couple times that Andre Drummond can do so much on the floor passing wise. And I was like, oh my God. We're bought in a little bit too much here. Yeah. I know they're good. They're connected. They've been, friends or whatever for a long time, but I do like that option, obviously. I think one thing, and we can talk about this a little bit, and we'll get into Tobias Harris here a little bit more. They play, Andre Drummond and Tobias Harris play really well together in that pick and roll. And that's something that I actually have really enjoyed. Maybe probably the one standard that they've set is when Embiid goes out, the offense kind of trickles down to Tobias Harris's hands. And that's a really good place to start, I think. Harris looks actually much better as a facilitator in the pick and roll. So I really like that aspect with Andre Drummond as well, as a backup center, because we didn't see that with Dwight Howard as much last year. I think that's more of a chemistry thing between those two, which I don't know why, but that's how I guess they played together in Detroit.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess that makes sense. Maybe they're carrying.
I think so.
They should have, right? They definitely did. But regardless, so let's talk a little bit about Tobias here and the whole thing with the fans. So it was Monday night. He was playing pretty poorly. He was getting booed, and then he made a bucket, and then he told the fans to, I think the quote was don't clap with an expletive. Yeah. Basically saying don't do that after you've been booing me. And there's a little bit of a reference point back to Joel Embiid telling the fans to shut up. Was it 2 seasons? Was it last year or 2 seasons ago? Regardless.
I think it was 2 seasons ago.
I think 2. Yeah,
maybe 2. Yeah,
I think it was 2 seasons ago.
Probably.
He was too good last year. I feel like we just wouldn't have had altercation.
So, if you want to get into that, what did you take away from after a good game from Tobias last night, and then him kind of rescinding those comments, saying, I let the frustrations boil over a little bit. But like you said, I don't know if there's a lot to it other than just that frustrations boiling over. But
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems like he's kind of getting fed up the same way Sixers fans are getting fed up with him. So I don't know how you guys feel.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start, with the original, act of what he did in that game, and I just want to start by saying that he was completely wrong to do that, or I shouldn't use the term wrong. I should say it's not in his best interest to do that. And if you want to get more comfortable with the fans, at the end of the day, I do know that the overall motive of the fan base is to motivate the team. They want you to play good. They want you to win basketball games, and that's Philadelphia fandom as a whole. And part of it is we do know what we're talking about when we talk about sports as fans. Philadelphia is very in tune to little things that are in sports, whereas other fan bases aren't that in depth with it. And I think every little thing gets noticed. So when Tobias is playing bad like that, it gets noticed. The contract gets talked about, which I don't think the contract, like, I get it. It creates expectations, but at the same time, it's like, Tobias, is he supposed to decline that contract? Like, you know what I mean? I would take it, and I know I can't fulfill that expectation. I would take the booze with me too. But, at the end of the day, in his best interest, you never want to challenge the fans. At the end of the day, they're there for you. They are paying money to see you perform well. They are paying money to see you win, and they do have the best interest for the most part. What bothers me with the fans, I guess, is more of the online presence. And I would hope that Tobias is not, paying attention to that. Like, you just shouldn't. Any NBA player, you should not be reading through replies to your tweet. You know what I mean? Like, you're looking for trouble at that point. You're looking for stuff to bring your confidence down, and get you worked up. So, like, it's just a little thing, the derogatory things, but it just gets taken a little too far, I guess. But as far as the situation with him, I think he kind of did learn from that mistake. It is a mistake at the end of the day, because the last thing you want is the entire city talking about you more when you're in a slump, right? Yeah. So all he did with that, it's going to get seen. It's going to get recorded. Everything gets recorded these days. I know it was just a small part of the game, but you got to be smarter than that. You got to be more composed than that. And, the fact that he kind of let himself get that frustrated all feeds into the performance as well. You got to calm down, bring yourself back, level yourself out, and just play basketball. And hopefully he can get back to that. But as far as his comments last night, I did appreciate them. I thought it was mature for him to say that. But as you said, James, we don't know, right? Like, we don't know if he really meant that he loves the fans. I will assume that he does, because I do like Tobias as a person. I think he is a good guy. I know we're going to talk about the fit, so I'll throw it to you now. I know I've talked enough here. We're going to talk about the rest a little later, so I'll throw it to you guys.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to this. Like, there's such a balance in my mind. Like, on the one hand, I absolutely think the Sixers should look to trade Tobias if they can for better fitting parts, because he's not the guy that complements Embiid to the best of his ability. But the one thing that I will say, and that he is very important to this team still, when we think about the other pieces around Joel Embiid that complement him, Toby's about the only one that scores and creates his own buckets. Like, even when we think about Maxey and Curry, especially Curry, it's all in the two-man game with Joel. That's still him setting picks. That's still him rolling, setting screen. That's still Joel being actively involved. Like, we can't ask Joel Embiid to be the number one guy on every single possession on both ends of the floor. Like, we're just asking so much of this guy that he needs times where it's just like, give it to Toby, figure it out, go make something happen. Like, that has to be a part of, like, I just need this possession off. And I mean, Toby hasn't produced on that enough. And, like, the bottom line is he hasn't played well enough. Like, that's definitely a fact. It's fair why fans are getting upset about it. Like, he's shooting sub 30 from three. He's not playing up to his standards. But with that being said, we can't hold him to standards that he's not able to achieve. Like, he was terrific last year. That was the best he's ever played. I mean, would I love for him to do that every single year, every single game? Absolutely. But I don't know if that necessarily is Tobias Harris. Right. And I also think with Ben Simmons out, like, not that he's become the new, like, scapegoat, but there's a lot of just kind of, like, blame Tobias and that I don't necessarily think he deserves. I mean, for a large part, he is who he is, and holding him to a standard of him being the second best player on this team, which obviously the contract dictates, and obviously I understand where those expectations come with, but that's really not who he is. Like, he was, when he first signed here, once again, he was part of a big four with Jimmy Butler, with Ben Simmons, with Joel Embiid. It was completely fine for him to be able to take a backseat in that. Then with Ben Simmons here last year, there was so much of Ben just slashing, creating for Tobias, stuff like that, him getting easy buckets off that. Those things don't happen anymore. We're not in that spot. There's now so much more thrown on his plate that it's just like there's a little too much for this guy to handle right now. So I am sympathetic a little bit, Tobias, to the fact that I think he's being held against a measuring stick that I'm not sure that he can really stand up to. But at the end of the day, he does have to play better and get back to being the Tobias that we know. I think last night was a great sign of progress in that. And outside of just like stats, it's just the decisiveness, the straight line attacking. That's what I want to see from him. And that's what kind of keeps me in tune. I do think, I mean, it's been Doc Rivers has been the Tobias Harris whisperer. So I do think there was a little bit of they talked. Both of them acknowledged that they talked prior to the game and getting back to like who he is. So I still have hope there that he can be like not necessarily the guy we need because, I mean, if we go into the postseason with Tobias Harris as our second best player, there's not a lot of hope for championship contending anyway. But I do think he can get closer to the guy that we expect.
Yeah, I think it is a little bit of that conundrum where it's like the frustration with me, like for me, kind of resides in the fact that it was the realization this year that I was like, it seems like he's really unable to take it to that next level.
Yeah.
Sean and I talked at the beginning of the season. We're like, we need Toby at 24 points per game.
Yeah.
Like he's going to have those opportunities. He's going to be in situations where he can control games and be the second scorer that we need. And I think that he's capped out. And like, again, he's not a bad player. He's a very good player and he's a very talented player. And I think in a different situation that's not so post heavy with our center, the way that Joel Embiid is, he might be more successful, but he's not, his play style is not necessarily conducive. And like both of you kind of referenced, the play with Ben Simmons is really understated at this point, where Ben created so much offense for Tobias. I think about the fast break game between the two of them. How often was Tobias Harris streaking down the floor, getting long distance passes from Ben? That happened all the time. There was a point last year where Tobias Harris was like a top 10 fast break scorer in the league. Like I remember he was like number 8, like more than halfway through the year.
Pretty crazy.
It's crazy. Tobias Harris is not a burner. He's not beating guys up and down the floor.
Not by any means.
He's very smart and he's able to leak down the floor and Ben was able to hit him, and they don't have a facilitator like that on the floor right now. So like there's probably a handful of buckets a game that Tobias Harris is missing just based off of that. And like, again, that's most of this offense. That's even Joel. Like you kind of forget how much Joel benefited from offensive, facilitation from Ben. And that's kind of where we see now. And I'd love to talk about this a little bit. Over the last 2 weeks or so, like in this stretch of Embiid games, how often have we seen him just bring the ball off the floor and just say, I'm going to score. I'm 7'2" and 280 pounds. And there's not like, I'm going to Euro step.
Amazing.
I'm going to beat you guys up and down the floor. I'm going to hit you with a Hezzy and a behind the back spin, everything. Like his bag is deep.
Yeah.
Way deeper than I think anyone realized. And it's been incredible to see him kind of morph into this. And this was kind of his reference last night as well, talking about the Andre Drummond minutes with him. And he's like, I don't really play center anymore. Yeah. He's like, you can put me anywhere and I'll figure it out. And that's kind of what he's doing. It's kind of been that type of season where it's like, all right, Joel, the ball's going to be in your hands basically all the time. Do whatever you got to do to make this work. And he's been able to change the way he plays. So Scotty, I just wanted to see what you feel with this, him kind of morphing into this all around great player, not just a post player, but being able to do everything.
Yeah, before I jump into it, I just wanted to comment on the Ben thing with Tobias, because I 100% agree. And I think something else to throw in there as well is defensive responsibilities as well. Ben Simmons covered a lot of people's butts on the defensive side of the ball, including Embiid and Tobias Harris. And then also just the mismatch portion. I feel like Tobias is not getting those mismatches that he was getting last year when you have 3, 6'9" to 6 or to 7 feet, 7 foot tall guys on the floor at the same time. He's just not getting those mismatches where they would have to throw their bigger guy on Ben in the post who's facilitating as well. So just wanted to comment on that really quick. But as far as Embiid, I mean, you hit some marks there. We already talked about like the scoring spree that he's been on, the MVP campaign that he's kind of getting back into now. He's amazing. And I just want to start, by saying that it's like an honor. I know we talk about this all the time, but it's an honor to get to see him play basketball. It's an honor to be part of this day and age of the NBA where I get to see that type of talent in that type of body. Like, it's absolutely incredible. And it's hard to measure, how far he can take. It seems like he doesn't have a ceiling or a cap on his game, and it's really awesome to see. But as far as him, just kind of doing everything, right? Like he's passing the ball better out of the post. He's passing better out of double teams. He's shooting the 3-point more efficiently. When he knows he needs to get in the paint, he goes in the paint and he dominates really quick. He does his thing. He gets to the foul line whenever he wants, right? Like everything he's doing, it's like you start to think, like, is this just too much, right? Like, are we just asking too much of Embiid? But then it's like he just continues to do it. So it's like, how far does that go? And that is my big worry. There are going to be nights where Embiid just simply needs a rest, man. And we should be able to get W's on those nights as well, just to help Embiid out. But he's simply amazing. Like that's all I can come to. I'm thinking back specifically last night. I'm sure you guys saw the clip. I think you guys may have even posted it. But he like takes it might have been a steal or a rebound. He takes the ball down the fast break. Cole Anthony tries to take a charge. He like Euro steps through this tiny space that he just should not be able to do that, and draws an and one on this tiny dude. Like, usually they get those calls, you know what I mean? So that type of stuff, and he's been doing it all season, and we saw him go head to head with KD like a week ago or so. He's a top talent in the NBA. He's a top talent in the world, and it's going to be interesting to see how he can keep improving.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said there. And first off, shout out to Cole Anthony for having the stones to try and take a charge there. Let's do that.
And getting ball tapped.
Yeah. But,
that was so funny.
Oh, yeah.
What's Pal doing, man?
He gets like 7 minutes a game. That's what he
But quick shout out to Miles Powell, because I love that he just loves being there. Like, that's the number one thing I will say about it. Like, I went to the game a couple weeks ago where you can just see him like soaking in every moment and just enjoying like being around the team. After the game, the Sixers posted a thing where it was a picture of Toby and Embiid like dapping up, and Miles Powell's just like kind of in the background, and Miles Powell just threw it on his story like family with the heart and stuff. And I just love him trying to like be included, and to be honest, like that matters. Like I like guys that want to be there, so that's cool. Hometown kid, I'm all about it. And then as far as the Embiid thing, I mean, first off, like for me, I fell in love with the Sixers during like the prime process years is when I really like got into this team and building. And I just remember like, first off, just watching like what the draft picks are going to be and how this is going to shake out. And I remember when they got the third pick, and I watched just about every Kansas game that year because I was in love with Andrew Wiggins at the time. And I remember watching Joel too. And then it was the broken foot, and it was, will this guy ever touch the court? Like it was 2 years without him. And then he came in that first debut game against the Thunder. It was like immediate, like this guy is special. And just, I would have never imagined that he could have ascended to like the level of play that he's at right now. And it's just been so cool to watch. And aside from that, he just gets it. Like he gets Philadelphia. He gets like being a star. Even like go back to the KD thing the other night, like he's going head to head with a top 3 player in the NBA, going back and forth, dueling with him and getting like the better of him. He's going jawing face to face with him. And then post game, he's just talking about like, if there's anybody better than me, it's probably Kevin Durant, and giving him the respect there. So he just like everything, his mannerisms, his personality, just like I couldn't ask for anybody better to represent. And I agree that like, it's crazy how much the Sixers are asking out of him, and he's still delivering. Like Giannis is the only other player that I can really think of that is thought of as like the absolute centerpiece for offense and the anchor defensively. He's the only other guy in the NBA that I really think does it at the level that Joel does. Like every other team, there's at least guys to take pressure off in different regards when we look at stars. And I do worry, like it's insane. He's been doing it for as long as he has already. This is pretty much 2 years now where he's just not doing everything, because there's obviously help, but he's just like so important to this team. And without him, the team is that. So I do have like concerns that the longevity of it, but if we get this guy help, like he has ascended to the level of stardom that this guy is a grade A star that we can win a championship with. So I don't want these years to get wasted. I pray a trade comes and just figures out this team, completes it, and puts them ready to contend, because Joel's ready and we can't ask for anything more.
Yeah. I mean, there's not much more to say about Joel and his legacy. Like I'm literally I was picked up his stats right here, and I'm just looking at it, and I'm like kind of chuckling at how ridiculous it is that he's shooting damn near 40% on 3.5 attempts from 3. Like he's become so much more of just a a really damn good basketball player, not just one of the best centers in the league. Like, he's just one of the best basketball players in the league. And that's just been a really fun progression from him. And just like, Sean, you kind of mentioned earlier, just the way he handles things, like just this season and alone, like he got pissed when he deserved to be pissed. He's been able to handle business when he can handle business. And, you know, talk about missing games. He's been injured at times. This is really what we're seeing. This is 100% Joel Embiid. Like, this is what we're seeing when he's actually healthy. He was hurt early on. Obviously, everyone missed a lot of time with COVID. And I like, that's going to be something that people talk about with the MVP this year. Everyone's missed time. Everyone's got COVID. Like, there's not many guys that haven't missed time. Like, the Jazz are the only team that haven't had like a real big outbreak, but that's kind of beside the point. Like, just watching him play, you know, it used to be like, oh, Embiid's the best center and whatever, blah, 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 that argument. He's just, you know, a very well-rounded, kind of transcendent basketball player. He's changing the game. And it's really fun to see that. But when you talk about this team, and, you know, I guess we could talk about trades a little bit. You don't want to talk about it too much because I don't think there's like a lot of traction on anything yet. But Scotty, I know we talked about it when I joined the show with you. We talked about our trade targets a lot. Is there anyone that you're really looking at right now? I know the Kings have been a hot topic recently. So is there anything you're looking at right now you think maybe this is the guy or that's the guy, or something immediate with maybe Tobias that you could see a change kind of being made soon?
So as far as like the Tobias thing, it's so hard for me as far as like his value. You know what I mean? Because like the contract, but then he is still he's a good player. But like, yeah, I have like no clue what his value is on the market, honestly. Like, for me to say what we could get back for him, I really don't have an idea. As far as like fits, you know, around the league, you know, Portland's something that has surfaced. That's an interesting take. Give, you know, Dame a lower post, you know, somebody who can score 20 plus points out there in Portland. I don't know too much about Tobias. It's an interesting topic. I would definitely, you know, explore it. Just to be clear, I would definitely explore it if I'm Daryl Morey. As far as, you know, the Kings situation, it's definitely interesting, and it like, you know, garners my interest into it. As far as, you know, De'Aaron Fox, like, I like De'Aaron Fox. I think he's a good player. I think he could turn into a great player. I just, once again, you know, fit wise, like, I don't know about the fit. And then on the other side of that conversation is, do you worry about the fit when you're trading a guy like Ben Simmons, or do you just try to get the best player available? Because there's a lot of conversation about Tyrese Halliburton or De'Aaron Fox. Obviously, Tyrese Halliburton would fit the Sixers a lot better than De'Aaron Fox would right now, just based on skill sets. And that's not to say Halliburton's a better player. Jaylen Brown is the guy. Like, I don't know the situation with Boston. Like, there's rumors all over the place about that. He's the guy that would like kind of make me want to wait a little bit, at least until the deadline, I feel like, because you want to see what happens with that. I know they just lost another game last night, right at the buzzer. He missed like a layup, which is terrible, but it's good for the Sixers in a sense of, you know, that team going downhill and moving pieces. And I just hope that kind of continues that trend that Boston's on. I think they're below 500 now. I think they're like 18-21 or 18-20. So hopefully that continues. Jaylen Brown is that piece that I covet. You know, I've moved probably away from Damian Lillard even, just because Jaylen Brown, I'm looking at that wing spot. I'm looking at Maxey. I'm looking at what Jaylen Brown can do. You know, he's a 25, you know, 26-point scorer a game. He can shoot. He plays pretty good defense. He's an athletic guy, which, as you mentioned, Sean, athleticism is something that we severely, you know, lack in Philly. So getting a guy like that, I think, kind of solves all the issues. The only, you know, conundrum there is sending Ben Simmons to Boston. Now, you would hope that there's like a third team involved. That would be my wish as far as that. But Jaylen Brown is the guy that I like covet. I just don't know how available he is. But the situation that the Celtics are in would cause me to wait, because at the end of the day, I know everybody's talking about the Kings. You don't want to waste Joel Embiid's, you know, prime years. And I 100% agree with it. And I'm glad I don't have to make the decision on this trade, honestly, because you're looking at it from one side, you get some help in here right now. Is that package you get from Sacramento, is that going to help you enough to get past the Bucks or the Nets in the East? I I don't know. I don't really think so, right? Like they're probably still a third seed or a fourth seed in the East, even after making that move with Sacramento. So when I look at it that way, now you're wasting like 3 to 4 years of Embiid's prime if it ultimately doesn't turn into what you think it would. So you got to be really careful in this situation, and it's like you got to meet in the middle of patience and desperate, right? So it's rough, and I'm glad I'm not Daryl Morey.
Yeah, Ben Simmons as a Boston Celtic would be the #1 villain in Philly sports history. Just no doubt about it.
100%.
But absolutely worth it if they can pull Jaylen Brown. I do agree that he is like more or less the missing piece. Like when you look at this team, if they can just add like a wing that can score and defend at a high level, that's what this team misses. And really, they haven't really had. That's also what's kind of brought me into like the Brandon Ingram and coming around on that as a trade. It's just like from a roster construction aspect, like that's what I would be looking for. And obviously, the Sixers can't be too picky. Like if there's a high level guard that becomes available, they absolutely have to jump on it because like just the situation that they're in. But like ideally, Jaylen Brown is that guy. I don't necessarily think he is going to become available. I don't think his times are that bad in Boston yet. Like I think at least for this year, they're going to try and figure it out. Yeah. But I really hope I'm wrong on that, and I hope he does.
Would if I was there.
Yeah, no, I agree too. I think like honestly, I think the Celtics are in a worse mess than the Sixers, which as much as people want to talk about how bad the Sixers are and whatever the drama or whatever, we go to bat and continuing to have hope in this. And I guess the thing I will say when we talk about like a Kings trade or even a Trailblazers trade, really the model you're kind of adopting there is looking at the Bucks and how they won last year, how they have Giannis as their prime superstar and just bringing out guys to complement. And that is Drew Holiday. That is Chris Middleton. And first off, Chris Middleton and Tobias Harris have been lumped into like the same category, I feel like, for their whole career. And I feel like that can't be like more wrong. Like Chris Middleton is worlds better than Tobias Harris.
Middleton, he's a baller.
Both with skill wise and fit wise, like he's just massively better than Tobias, which is a sad realization. I do think Toby is like a negative trade asset. Like when you look at these types of guys you're trading, like he's obviously not playing up to his best. The GM's looking at that as like a buy low and he can improve. He's never improving to like the weight of his contract. So it's kind of like I just don't see the appeal from other GMs. Yeah. I could see something to the extent of like a Buddy Hield, Marvin Bagley, kind of guys that are already like on the way out for their team or that they're looking to trade, like a bad contract for bad contract kind of situation. From Morey's perspective, I think the tactic has always been like, get your centerpiece around the Ben trade and use Tobias to fill the leftovers. And I think he's going to stick to that. I think he's going to try his best to make that the plan and stick to it. And I just hope it comes to fruition.
Can I just ask one question? Yeah. Like in that situation, do you think that he would wait until he does the Ben move before he would like make that move for Tobias? Or do you think it doesn't really matter? He's going to make whatever move makes sense that comes first.
Yeah, I think if he is set on waiting for the offseason for a Simmons trade, like if there's nothing at the deadline that satisfy him, I could see him moving Tobias for something, just kind of a shot in the dark. Let's try something. At least we're kind of going for it, and we're still waiting on the main piece in this. But I think like if there is, I think it will be close to the deadline that it happens if it does at all.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and to weigh on that a little bit, the one thing, like, and as it's been a tough realization as well, that this is probably going to go into the offseason. Like, a lot of teams can rationalize 2 years of a max contract in Tobias Harris in a trade much more than 2.5 or 3 years, like we're seeing now. To look at Boston, though, again, like Boston's 18-20, we're about halfway through the year, and they don't have $30 million sitting like the Sixers do. The Sixers have $30 million completely MIA. Yeah. Whereas Boston is fully healthy. This is the team they put together around 2 young stars. Like this is the team that they were thinking was going to be an Eastern Conference Finals contender, like that they're competing against Miami and Milwaukee and Brooklyn. And they are not. They're not even competing against the Knicks. And the Knicks are 18-22 and they're underperforming. Like, and the Hawks are underperforming. There's a lot of teams out there that are, I mean, the Hawks have dealt with a lot of injuries this year, to be fair as well. But like, I don't know. I think that there's going to be some teams looking to make some massive changes. And again, like these are good players looking for maybe a position where they thrive more And those front offices might be looking, okay, we can swap this guy for this guy and still make progression forward. There's win-win trades out there that I think are there to be taken, but I don't know if that's going to happen in February. That's probably going to happen, unfortunately, in July. And as disappointing as that is, we're already halfway through the year. So I don't know, man. Like, it's the trade deadline in my head is like, it seems light years away. It's a month. It's less than 2 months away. We're not far away from that.
Oh, go ahead. I didn't mean to.
I'm just, I don't know. Like, I don't know how much more there is to like, there's nothing like, there's no solid foundation of any trades that have been happening. There's only been rumors. There hasn't been anyone like strongly linked. So I don't know what's going to happen.
I know it seems like everything's just up in the air. You know, they throw out the Sacramento thing and it's just like, okay, we're making Fox and Halliburton available, but like, what is the package? You know what I mean? Like, what is the baseline of what we're talking about here? But something I wanted to ask you guys, you know, one, did anything ever happen with Ben Simmons being in the building the other day? I want to ask that question. Did you ever like find anything out about that?
I didn't see anything. I don't know. The part that was weird to me was Dan Burke saying that he didn't know he was there. That was the part that was like, I just don't understand. I think, I mean, I'm sure what it is Ben coming in to get fined and check whatever box that he has to kind of pass it. I don't think there's any sort of intention to coming back to the team or anything like that. So I'm sure he did his workout, did his training, check in. But I haven't seen anything concrete on that.
Yeah, me either.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask next, literally, was, you know, do you think there's any shot of him returning to the Sixers? And, you know, it's really kind of calmed down. And like you guys said, Tobias has kind of been the distraction from it. You know, that was the distraction from the team. And now Tobias is kind of distracting everybody from Ben Simmons. But it is such a wild time in Philly right now. And you got to hope for the best. I mean, that's all we can sit here and do. We have no clue what is on Morey's mind other than him saying that he'll wait 4 years if he has to. So in reality, we really don't know anything. They can release as many rumors as, you know, they possibly want, but as we've seen so far, nothing is picking up traction, and it's wild, man. I don't get it, honestly, because I find Ben Simmons very valuable. Like, and I know that there's teams they're trying to get him for a low cost, you know, they consider him a risk maybe. I don't know. I feel like if you could get him in a situation where there's not much pressure right now, I think he could, you know, kind of figure some things out there. But it's hard to say what's going on in his mind, what's going on in Daryl Morey's mind. We just have to kind of wait and see, which sucks.
Yeah, and he's just such a balance of, like, obviously the potential's always been there. Obviously he's got such like a high margin for what you're hoping for, but at the same time he's such like a niche player and like needs such a particular skill set surrounding him that it's like he's just not made for every team. Like, there's plenty of tems that he just doesn't make sense to add on and that like aren't realistic like trade partners. So it is tough finding like a clear deal, and just like all the circumstances in this make it so strange. Like, we've never seen a guy sit out the season like this in the middle of a freshly signed 5-year max deal. Like, everything's just been so weird with it. And I guess the thing that I don't know if I'm even hoping for, but the slight possibility, like, I feel like there has to be a point where this guy wants to play basketball, right? Like, there has, like, if this gets past the deadline, what do you do if you're Ben Simmons? Like, obviously you've dug your heels in that you're never playing for the 76ers ever again, but you're now like past the point. And from my understanding, the all the money that he has been fined, which is now over $10 million, is just in kind of this account, just kind of lingering for who's right to the money it is. And the hope in Ben's camp is that when he is traded, that money still eventually goes through him just via the other team, while the Sixers are very, well, that is no longer your money. That is ours now, which from the Sixers perspective, I absolutely agree with it. Like, there's no reason to pay this guy for not doing his job. But like, if you actually want to get paid, this gets past the deadline. Are you going to push this on the whole year? Is there a point where you call bluff? And I mean, I don't think that's a great bet on the Sixers end that does happen, but I feel like that has to at least be in the back of Ben's mind.
My biggest concern my biggest concern is an opposing team or another team that's looking at trading for Ben Simmons would be just what you said, Sean. Doesn't he want to just play basketball? You know, like me, like I'm somebody, I just enjoy playing basketball. You know what I mean? Right. I like hooping. And I think that's, you know, true hoopers, there's no way you could step away from the game this long. That stage, that's the thing. True hoopers embrace that stage, embrace pressure, and it just makes you question his love for the game, which I hate to say. I don't feel that I have that privilege to question people's love for a professional, their job that they do, but it does make you question it. There's no other way to look at it, because I just don't see how you could, one, back away from your teammates that you played this long with. Obviously there's been a little drama, but they've created bonds. Danny Green stuck up for, Ben Simmons over the offseason. And then basketball is the simplest point that you always come back to. It's like the baseline. It's like, don't you just like to play basketball? I don't get it.
I don't know, man. It's hard to get in the mind of Ben Simmons, because clearly there's a lot more going on than that. One final question I do have for you guys, because hilarious stat line last night. Danny Green did the Tony Snell, which is, I love the niche market of like NBA and all that stuff, because that joke to a random person probably doesn't make that much sense. But Danny Green pulled a Tony Snell last night. He's at 24 minutes, no stats at all. Not a bucket, not a rebound, not an assist, not a steal, not a block. Literally nothing. Did he take a shot?
0 for 2. 0 for 2.
Yeah, 2 shots.
0 for 2. So,
like, does that count?
Me, I don't know. To me, I've been like, Sean and I have had these conversations. I'm not pro Danny Green at this point. I'm very much, unless Danny Green is coming off the bench with a sufficient small forward starting in front of him, he needs to like be somewhere else and not on a Sixers team anymore. So, Scotty, I just want to ask you, and then obviously then to Sean, how do you feel about Danny Green?
Yeah, so as far as like Danny Green, the basketball player, I mean, I feel like he's kind of washed now. Maybe I'm jumping the gun, but even last season, he's still a good shooter. He can still hit shots from time to time. He can get hot, but a lot of the time you do see his legs like going dead. You know what I mean? He's just got some really dead legs. So looking at him, I'm with you, James. I would prefer for him not to, start one. He definitely shouldn't start. So let's start there. Like, he should definitely come off the bench if he's going to play. But in games like last night where he's just simply not doing anything, I would like to see those minutes go to an Isaiah Joe or a Korkmaz, honestly. Yeah. And that's like the thing going forward. Like, once Matisse comes back, once Milton comes back, once Maxi's back, I would only put Danny Green in if, you need a spark. Like, if things are going bad, there's like bad momentum, if a leader's out that day, you need some leadership on the court. And I would see if he misses like two 3-pointers in a row, 3 3-pointers in a row, don't play him the rest of the game. Like, that's always good for his shooting at this point. There's nothing else that, aside from leadership, that he's really good for. And he is, similar to Tobias, but at a greater extent, suffering from Ben Simmons' loss. Like, it's simply put, he's suffering from that. But yeah, he cannot. If you really want to go in and compete in the playoffs, he cannot start. And the other side of that is Matisse. He has to take those steps. I know he's out on COVID protocols, but he has to take those steps offensively so that he can play on the court, more than Danny Green. Because I think that's a problem, is when we see the offense start going stale with Matisse Thybulle on the court. It's like, we got to go to Danny. He's got to space the floor out. So then you lose, everything else that comes with it. So, I'm out on Danny, as far as his value. I wouldn't mind if he's like a throw-in piece at all. Like, I send it. And I think he's making like $10 million this year. Is that true?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. So.
Yeah, I've been pretty dug in as a Danny Green defender. Last night was a tough one for the brand. I mean, not a lot to say there. And one of his missed shots, by the way. So 0 for 2. The one was a pretty normal 3-point attempt. Both were 3-point. The second one was a pull-up 3 in transition.
Yeah. I can't stand that.
Like, it was not only like, you've done absolutely nothing. You are zeros across the board, but you have the nerve to pull that, and that's your shot attempt. So I don't know. It's getting tougher and tougher to defend Danny. I mean, he's well past like his prime and his successful years. I still think he can be useful as like a complimentary bench piece, a guy that just come in, shoots corner threes, spaces the floor. I mean, like everything with this team, he's not that he's being asked to do too much, because he didn't do a lot last night. But he is who he is at this point. He is for sure washed up past his prime, but I still think he can be a rotational shoot threes guys, but that's all he is.
Like, asking him to guard, like, as far as like washed up, like asking him to do too much, like guard Trae Young in the playoffs last year. You know what I mean? Like, stuff like that. you
Yeah,
just
crazy
can't
ass.
do that stuff. Like, you know what I mean? Like it just can't happen. I'm with you.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's very tough to watch. I still think he has value in, leadership. And if he was coming off the bench and maybe if he was a bit cheaper, I'd be a little bit more into it. But yeah, I talk about with Sean a lot. Like, there aren't a lot of small forwards starting in the NBA that don't dunk. Like, Danny Green doesn't dunk. Seth Curry doesn't dunk. It's surprising when Tyrese Maxey dunks. Like, Tobias Harris needs to be very open to dunk. Like, there's the only person on the team that actually throws down dunks is Joel. But
really don't dunk the ball.
They don't ever. Man. Like, literally ever.
How the easiest buckets to get?
Seriously, and they don't. So that's kind of where I fall on it. Like, if you're starting small forward in the NBA and you aren't like getting to the rim ever enough to like just dunk the ball.
He did have that putback slam. That one putback slam.
Yeah. And I jumped out of my seat. I launched out of my seat. I was like, holy shit, Danny Green dunked.
Can you imagine side note, can you just like imagine like George Niang trying to dunk?
Dude, last night was a prime one. Like he literally had a drop pass driving to the basket, and he was just like, "Nope, not doing it." And a little reverse lay-in.
Yeah, what?
And he was at a plus 28. I mean, he's so smart on the court. Like he's so.
I love
smart.
George.
I like him a lot, man. The minivan, but he's very much not on the athletic side.
No. The only guy that brings the level up is Matisse. He's the only guy that really like flies above the rim. There's really not much else.
Did you guys know that he had like that type of like obviously to be a defensive, star like he is, you have to have like some type of athletic. Like, did you know that he had like bounce like that? Like coming out of college?
I did not. The one that got me this year specifically was there was a play where he went up to dunk, and somebody went up to contest it, and he kind of like pump fake dunked and still slammed it down.
Like brought it on the other side.
Yeah, so like there definitely is like Matisse is obviously the only real guy. I mean, it's tough because he's still like so limited in what he can do because of the offensive, but like I guess we do have that going, some sort of athlete at least.
He's like a quick jumper though, Matisse. Like he gets to the rim fast.
Yeah.
So like when he goes up to dunk on you, like you probably don't even know it. And then he's up in the air dunking on you. The windmill he had last year, I think, really cemented it for me. I was like, wow, he was up there.
He's got to obviously he's got to increase his confidence offensively all around, but like specifically that, like try to dunk on someone like that will definitely get Philly fans on your side. Like, that's something we're lacking. So yeah, Matisse is an interesting subject, but we could go on for days about the Sixers, man.
Yeah, obviously. And again, I'm sure this is going to happen again. This crossover between us two and you happens not enough, but it could happen way more.
Sure.
So if you want to check out Scotty's stuff, check him out on Twitter at Scotty Drowned. Follow DSM Media on Twitter as well and on YouTube. He does a lot of great stuff. So check him out. Sean, if you got anything else before we bounce?
No, I'm good.
All right, then we're good to go. Scotty, again, thank you for coming on. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.